Hi, my name is Jef Bowles. I'm the principal at Piccolo Engineering in San Francisco. I do a lot of Perforce training, and one of the things that I will do when I'm doing training on site is I will take a little bit of time during the middle of the day and go over some source management rules of thumb. So when you see the term SCM, Source Code Manager, that's what we're referring to. And this rules of thumb talk that you're getting ready to hear is something I will do during lunchtime as a slight change of topic and as a review of information that's true of many source management systems, not just Perforce or just ClearCase. So I'm going to go into that now. One of the first rules is have an expert. Develop them locally if you need to, but have an expert available to you. At least one person should be around to make sure that you're playing to the strengths of the product that you've purchased. At least one person should have read the entire manual cover to cover. Not necessarily committed it to memory, but simply read it, so that a few months from now they can think of a particular problem that comes up and say, I saw something that allows me to fix this. Let me go back and look at the manual. I remember somewhere I saw it. Knowledge of an item is sometimes as useful as knowing the item exists and going and looking for it. There's certain basic things to train for, and there are different roles that people are going to assume in using such a system. For example, the administrator is going to be interested in backup, checkpoint, restore, those kinds of things. A developer, and I don't necessarily mean a person who's writing Java source code or something like that. That person who's writing Java, the person who's writing a test document, the person who's writing a marketing document, anything like that. I use the term developer to refer to anybody creating content. And a developer has to understand the daily grind, how to add a file, how to delete a file, how to edit a file, etc. A project leader or a technical manager needs to understand that, but also understand how to create new branches, new code lines, new work. Now, that daily grind that I alluded to earlier needs to be simple. In fact, anybody who's working on the system should be able to describe at a very high level what they're doing. For example, I'm working in this particular area for new release work, or I'm working in that particular area to work on a patch. And that same person should know off the top of their head the exact keystrokes for the daily grind. Add a file, delete a file, revert a file, submit a file, that kind of thing. Is to use default configurations when possible. Try to avoid outsmarting the system. For example, there may be an SCM, a source code management primitive, for sharing a file or a file system between a Unix and an NT platform, even though they have different end-of-line characteristics inside of text files. If there is, use it. Don't just simply try to outsmart it with a Samba mount or some sort of NFS mount or something like that that tries to make it transparent for you. Usually transparent third-party solutions aren't as transparent as you want them to be. Another thing is type in real change descriptions. It's not quite a default configuration, but different systems have ways of requiring you to enter change descriptions, or like Visual Source Safe, not caring if you put in a change description. Put one in. Also, don't complain if the source management system puts in the locks on files at submit time instead of at checkout or edit time. Different systems have made different policy choices. Try to understand why they made those choices. Now, set up new development projects very deliberately. Try to set them up anticipating some of the hard questions that will come along later. For example, pick path names. Pick the path names that you're going to be using very carefully and deliberately. Use the source code management primitives to create new branches. P4 branch, P4 integrate are a good example. If it's too hard, if something is too difficult, find your answer in the manual. Find your answer from tech support. Don't just bully your way through a difficult problem. And don't even start work on a system until you have a backup and restore strategy in place that your administrator has explained to you in monosyllables. If you do not trust your restore strategy, don't use the system until you do. Now, there's a set of things that you simply want to avoid doing under any circumstance. Don't do these things. Don't create a new branch or a new code line simply with an add operation. Use the primitive within the source management system. Don't destroy other people's work. You might obsolete somebody's work because you were working on a long-term bug fix while they were working on a short-term version of the same bug fix. Don't type in a dumb change description like, I modified a file. Say why you did it, not just what you did. Don't enter a keystroke in two different places. Don't type in a bug fix in two different places. Type it in one place, then use the source management provisions to propagate that work to the other place. Because otherwise, you're a human being. You might have fumbled in the keystrokes, and at that point you've got two versions that are slightly different. That can be a giant problem later. Also, don't wait until a crash to test your restore strategy. We refer to the 1989 earthquake that happened in the San Francisco area as the Loma Prieta earthquake. And a lot of Santa Cruz went away because of that earthquake. Buildings collapsed. If your backup tapes are next to your computer and next to the data they backed up, and the computer room collapses or catches fire, you have no backups, except maybe an offsite backup that is weeks old. Anticipate these kinds of things before they happen, not after. Also, don't delete revisions. Many systems have provisions for deleting individual revisions of a file. If you need to get rid of a file, truly get rid of it for a very embarrassing business reason or a very strict legal reason, get rid of the entire file. Don't simply get rid of an individual revision. It's bad form. Also, try to make a check-in correspond to a single unit of functionality. For example, one bug fix, one new feature. Try to avoid having multiple bug fixes, all within the same check-in if you can. That way, you can refer to one submission that fixes one thing, and depending on which source management system you're using, your project lead might be able to use that to propagate that individual bug fix into a patch in a very tidy and efficient way. Different tools have different behaviors, different quirks. For example, in Perforce and ClearCase, making a label is a two-step operation. Make the name, apply the name to everything. In CVS, it's a one-step operation. Apply the name. If it doesn't exist, make it. It's not that one strategy is better than the other. They simply are different ways that the tools operate. Know what those foibles are. Perforce locks files when you do the submit. ClearCase and CVS do it when you do the edit or checkout. It's not that one way is right and the other way is wrong. But know the difference and know the difference in behavior. For that one, as an exception though, Perforce will lock at edit time with a new option. So if you're using Perforce, be aware that newer releases have slightly different behavior. And labels are nifty. Labels are very handy, but they're not just for tracking releases. You can use labels to track personal work. Find out from your system manuals how to. One of the rules of computer literacy is, if something is too difficult, stop and ask the question, is it you or is it the tool? It may be that the tool is the wrong thing for the job. You don't use Microsoft Word to do spreadsheet work. Try to figure out whether it's you or the tool. In source management, merging tends to be particularly problematic in most systems. Visual Source Safe is really nasty when it comes to merging. So, if you're having problems with merging, you might be using Visual Source Safe, or you might need to spend some time doing some basic remedial work trying to understand how your tool does merging. Spend some time on that before you go back to your original problem. If restoring from a backup is time-consuming or error-prone, stop everything and fix the backup strategy immediately. Few things in a software company are as important as making sure that there's a reliable place to put your data. Also, type in change descriptions. Don't be lazy. Type in real change descriptions. If you think that's too hard, the tool's making it too hard, then automate some way to get credible change descriptions into your work. Lastly, pay for a shoulder to cry on. Pay for the support. Pay for the maintenance. Pay for the upgrades. And then use the support before the emergency. Know what its strengths are. know what its weaknesses are. It's important to know that tech support is open during business hours, but not open in the middle of night. Or that tech support will take 20 minutes to respond to you, or an hour to respond to you, or will pick up the phone immediately and forward you to an engineer immediately. Know those things before an emergency. Thanks very much. This concludes this talk.